welcome to How to Fix It. Red Dwarf is back, baby. I know that I've started a lot of videos this year with the sentence, way back in 2012, but way back in 2012, the first book series I looked at on this show wasn't MASH or even the Hitchhiker's Guide series. It was the 4 Red Dwarf novels written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor. Or, rather more accurately, a holographic simulation of me looked at the first 3 and stuck me with the really bad one. Anyway, since then, I've talked about the American pilot last year, and then this year I looked at one of the Dave Holland Space Cadet scripts, but other than that, I haven't gotten to talk about the Red Dwarf that I love, the original British version, since October of 2012, which is about 4 years ago. Red Dwarf is, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest science fiction sitcoms ever created. And I'm happy that it's still going strong nearly 30 years later. But they've had some missteps along the way. While the first 6 series are fantastic, they have their weak episodes, and the 7th series is the absolute worst that the show had to offer. While some episodes were good, like Stoke Me a Clipper, which had the long-awaited character development for Rimmer, and the return of fan-favorite Ace Rimmer, Blue, which most people forgive for the dream sequence that gave fanfic writers slash fodder and the Munchkin song, and Nanarchy is forgiven because of the return of Norman Lovett's Holly. The rest of the series, however, was garbage. Part of that is because of the removal of the studio audience, and part is because of Chris Berry's sudden departure and Kochanski's presence screwing up the equilibrium of the crew, as her introduction pushed all of Rimmer's smeg-headed behavior into Crichton. You might be wondering why I'm not just reviewing that today, but that's because as bad as Series 7 was, all of the issues with it were fixed in Series 8. But they just created more problems, and led to the series going on hiatus for a decade. Also, I really don't want to watch Series 7 again. Anyway, yeah, Series 8 fixes all of Series 7's problems. They brought back Rimmer and Holly, brought back Red Dwarf, the ship, which they had lost at the beginning of Series 6, fixed the equilibrium of the crew, and brought the studio audience back. That would mean that the next series would be awesome, right? You'd think that, but it's not very good. It's an improvement, but it's still not as good as the show showed that it could be. And since Red Dwarf Series XI is coming out soon, I figure this is as good a time as any to look at what I find to be the most redeemable of the bad Red Dwarf. So let's put ourselves into stasis for 3 million years and check out Red Dwarf Series VIII. Okay, so on the off chance that you don't know what Red Dwarf is and haven't seen any of my previous videos where I've talked about it, which I'd forgive since they're from my first year of reviewing and they kinda suck, I'll give you a quick recap. Red Dwarf is about Dave Lister, played by Craig Charles, who ends up as the last human alive after he smuggles a pregnant cat aboard Red Dwarf, and the captain puts him in stasis as punishment. During his time in stasis, a faulty drive plate is misrepaired by Arnold J. Rimmer, played by Chris Berry, Lister's bunkmate and the second lowest ranked crew member, and incompetent with delusions of grandeur. The misrepaired drive plate causes a radiation leak that kills the entire crew, save for Lister and the cat, which he sealed in the cargo bay. The ship's computer AI Holly, played by Norman Lovett, is forced to keep Lister in stasis until the radiation reaches safe background levels, which happens to take 3 million years. Upon awaking, Holly, in an effort to keep Lister sane, brings back Rimmer as a hologram. They also discover that Lister's pregnant cat was the progenitor of an entire race of sentient cat people, of which only one remains on board the ship, who they refer to as the Cat, played by Danny John Jules. In the second series, they encounter a service mechanoid named Crichton, first played by David Ross, who leaves and then returns in Series 3 as a main cast member, now played by Robert Llewellyn. When Crichton comes aboard, Holly also changes his form to resemble his counterpart from a parallel universe, and is then played by Hattie Herridge. The first 5 series feature them going on adventures, fighting monsters of the week, and generally having good times. As Rimmer and Lister annoy each other, the cat is cool, and Crichton tries to break his programming to become his own mechanoid. In Series 6, they lose Red Dwarf and Holly, and spend 2 series trying to find it, with Series 7 having Rimmer leave the show to replace Ace Rimmer, his counterpart from an alternate universe where he's basically the coolest guy ever, who zigs wherever our Rimmer zags. In the next episode, they encounter an alternate version of Christine Kochanski, a former girlfriend of Lister's and former Red Dwarf crew member killed in the accident. Played by Claire Grogan during her recurring appearances in series 1 to 6, and Chloe Annette when she became a regular. At the end of the series, they discover that Red Dwarf hadn't actually been lost, but was stolen by Crichton's repairing nanobots, who shrunk the ship and eventually came aboard Starbug, which is why they lost the trail. They go back to where they started and discover chunks of Red Dwarf abandoned on a planet, including Holly, now played again by Norman Lovett, and Crichton orders his nanobots to give them back Red Dwarf and properly size it, which they agree to, and Series 7 ended with them entering a giant Red Dwarf which is rapidly shrinking. Series 8 began with the 3-parter Back in the Red, where upon crash landing in the newly rebuilt Red Dwarf, the Dwarfers find out that not only was Red Dwarf brought back, but so was the entire crew, who arrest them for stealing Starbug and bringing 2 stowaways aboard. Lister also discovers that Rimmer was brought back as well, but he is like he was back before the radiation leak, so he's back to the level of character development that he was during the first series. Lister needs Rimmer's help, so he gives Rimmer access to Starbug, which contains, among other things, positive viruses, which give luck and sexual magnetism, and also confidential crew files, which Rimmer could use to blackmail his way up to becoming an officer. And this being the Rimmer from Series 1, he jumps at the chance. The revived crew is confused that they seem to be 3 million years away from Earth and the ship has been defaulted to factory settings before JMC made cutbacks. The Dwarfers manage to escape the conviction for the original charge, but are convicted for their usage of the confidential crew files, of which the sentence is the same as the original charge. The rest of the series involves them being in prison and getting into wacky hijinks, like Lister signing them up for the Canaries, which he thinks is an a cappella singing group, but is actually a team of expendables sent in to see if the hazardous situations are safe for the important senior officers. They spend the series dealing with their prison sentence, running afoul of the other prisoners and Captain Hollister, and trying to figure out ways to either commute or escape their sentences. They meet a computer named Cassandra that can predict the future. Crichton is put in the women's wing of the prison due to lacking genitalia, and they find a time wand that they want to use to skip the 2 years of their sentence, but accidentally use it to turn a sparrow into a T-Rex. It makes sense in context, I promise. The finale has the ship getting attacked by a chameleonic microbe, and when they can't find a way to stop it, the crew abandons the ship and leaves all the prisoners, including the Dwarfers, to die. The finale ends with Rimmer being left on board the dying ship alone, and he escapes death by kicking the Grim Reaper in the nuts. Ah, another usage of the Linkara maneuver. The cliffhanger, as of now, hasn't been resolved, despite having 2 series since, and the resolution was only teased in the finale of Series X, with Rimmer alluding to saying that he saved the ship from the microbe, but he never gets to finish telling the story, so we haven't found out what happened yet. Bringing them back to Red Dwarf was a really good idea. 2 seasons away was good, and no offense to Hattie Herridge, but I was happy to see Norman Lovett back again, and all of his moments are hilarious. Between the moon impression and his showing up to give Lister and Rimmer inside information, I was laughing even if the episode was crap. Bringing the crew back was a good idea as well. It was also nice to see Captain Hollister back, since his few appearances in the first few series during flashbacks were always funny. Plus, having Rimmer back, even if he had only been away for a few episodes when you factor in his appearances in flashbacks and VR sequences after Stoke Me a Clipper, the Lister-Rimmer dynamic was missed. Plus, having the original smeg-headed Goit back was interesting because Lister has developed in the last 8 years, and showing him against a Rimmer who didn't develop with him really shows us that the Lister in Series 8 isn't the same slob who smuggled a cat on board and got put into stasis. Having the prison dynamic opened up some new opportunities as well, since it let the dwarfers still leave the ship to do salvage missions, and such as canaries, whereas had they been back to being technicians, they'd be stuck cleaning the gunk out of the chicken soup nozzles. It also developed the antagonism between Kochanski and Crichton, so it gave us the bickering roommates during the parts that Lister and Rimmer were united against a common enemy. Plus, I didn't hate Kochanski as much as I did in Series 7, though then again, I probably only hated her because she replaced Rimmer. The new characters are funny, like Kill Crazy and Warden Ackerman, who are hilarious. And strangely enough, Kill Crazy's voice makes me want to spend 15 minutes getting auto insurance. Back in the Red and Cassandra are awesome episodes, with Back in the Red having a lot of funny moments, and Cassandra being an episode of Red Dwarf that feels like one that we'd have seen during Series 3 to 5. Pete isn't all that good, but the stuff that was originally going to be in an episode titled The Captain's Office, with Lister and Rimmer going against Hollister, are fantastic. The series really focuses back on Lister and Rimmer, probably to make up for the lack of it in Series 7, and any scene with them together is fantastic. Their bunk room scenes really call back to the scenes we got in the first 2 series, giving us their random conversations about all manner of things, from the prison food to why you can't use the bathroom on the runway on an airplane. The random bunk room scenes had always been the best parts of the earlier series, and Series 8 delivers on the awesomeness of them 100%. We'll be right back with more of the show. Unless a radiation leak happens and wipes out the entire crew. But I can't see how that would happen because I repaired the drive plate correctly. And we're back. Wait a minute. Oh, smegging hell, holy you're a goit! Well, first of all, spending 3 episodes out of 8 episodes setting up the premise of the series was a bad idea, since we also had the 2-parter Pete, so as a result there were only 3 standalone episodes in the series. And only Cassandra was good. Cruddy TV is crap and only worth it for the stuff about Lister's appeal, and only the good is a really convoluted and confusing finale and feels sort of tossed together. Pete is mostly garbage, though the dinosaur effects are really good for a shoestring budget. And is it just me, or does the time wand look sort of like a tissue compression eliminator? Another problem is that Kat and Kochanski get nothing to do. They get some good jokes, but they're relegated to the background mostly, and anything they did was mostly forgettable, save for the scene with Kat dancing with the blue midgets, and the period joke in Only the Good, which aren't all that interesting or funny, but they're memorable, so I'll give it that. A lot of the episodes either feel bloated or incomplete. I mean, for the most part, they're lackluster, and most of the episodes, save for a couple, fall flat. Plus, the prison stuff does start to get repetitive. There's only so many times that Rimmer can get beat up by the other prisoners until it starts to wear. Same thing with Crichton's gender issues, like the penis gag that was originally from Cassandra that got put into Pete. It just doesn't really fit in with the overall tone of the episode, and probably wouldn't have fit into Cassandra either. They also ruined Captain Hollister. During his scant appearances in the first 2 seasons, he was a fair-minded, competent captain, even when Rimmer beat the crap out of him. But in Series 8, he's a joke. He overreacts to everything, and seems to be out to get Lister and Rimmer for trivial reasons. I know that they did commit crimes, but I feel like Hollister threw the book at them too hard. Also, the logic in some of the episodes is really bad. Like in Pete, Hollister sends in the entire Canary Squad, who end up stealing the time wand from Lister and Rimmer, when logically they should have only sent in the Dwarfers, since they know how the time wand worked. And Hollister gets pissed at them when it's his own damn fault it got stolen, since he sent in the mentally deranged who can overpower the sane people that he wanted to solve the dinosaur problem. Not to mention that in the finale, they find an escape pod from the SS Hermes that presumably is from 3 million years ago, seeing as how the sole occupant knows Captain Hollister. And nobody finds that a bit weird? Hollister just writes it off as the nanobots resurrecting her, but why would they do that? I know Holly says he does it to keep Lister sane and creates diversions, but why recreate an escape pod from a ship that got destroyed to destroy Red Dwarf? If it was a microbe from some Geld for simulant vessel, it'd be one thing. But what was the point of having Hollister's old flame show up? Unless she was a pleasure gilf, like Camille or something, which might explain why Hollister saw his old flame. But then again, wouldn't Rimmer have seen someone different? Either way, it's stupid, and it's a bad episode to have ended the show on, considering that we still haven't gotten resolution to this day. I know it's nitpicking, but it's annoyed me ever since I first saw the finale of Series VIII in 2011. Speaking of only the good, the ending. And the entire episode feels really rushed, and even the alternate ending is rushed as well. It's like it was supposed to be a two-parter, but they decided Pete deserved that honor instead. I mean, we go straight from the Baxter's hooch gag to the escape attempt, to the microbe, to the mirror universe, and then just as it's getting really good, the episode's over and Rimmer kicks death in the crotch. There was a lot of opportunity with the mirror universe, especially with the other versions of the Red Dwarf crew, and they didn't really use it to the full extent that they could have. I mean, Parallel Universe had a whole episode dedicated to another universe, and this episode has 5 minutes, barely. There was a lot of missed opportunity here, and it was kind of a wasted premise. And, this is a nitpicky point, but from a technical standpoint, I never liked the new Red Dwarf model from the Red Dwarf Remastered. I just prefer the shorter, fatter original version to the sleek, long, revised version. It's a small detail, but sometimes the ship does make the series, and overall the series was weak, as most of the episodes were weak, and only had a few gems, but it was a mostly bogged down series. Well, first and foremost, I'd have cut down Back in the Red to 2 episodes. Honestly, there was a lot of plotting about, and there's definitely extraneous bits that can be cut. Like the animated bit and, I hate to say it, but the blue midget dance scene. It looks cool, but it doesn't really serve a purpose, and well, tongue-tied is better. Plus, the entire series as a whole needed more episodes to focus on Kochanski and the cat. I mean, if this was Red Dwarf pre-Cadmium 2 leak, maybe there could have been an episode where Cat meets Frankenstein. Or maybe they find another Lister in stasis and he and the regular Lister fight over Kochanski. There were a lot of missed opportunities that could have been cool. Who was the ship's hologram? Was it George McIntyre, or was he resurrected as well? And we never actually did get to see Peterson again. I know guest star availability would have been an issue, but it still would have been cool to see a living George McIntyre, or have Lister and Peterson together again. But I think that Series 8 was being made around the time that Mark Williams was acting in Rob Grant's The Strangers, which might have been a bit awkward given the Grant-Naylor split. What about an episode about how everyone is coping with the fact that they're 3 million years in the deep space and everyone that they've ever known or loved is dead? Hollister had a wife. I'm sure people had relatives. No one ever seems the least bit bothered by that. That would have made a good episode, since Lister and Kochanski have had 6 or so years to come to grips with it. I also would have lessened the bits of stereotypical prison humor. The black comedy rape with Rimmer at the end of Back in the Red, the Rimmer getting beat up for snitching / pissing off the biggest guy, and that bit with Cat in the finale where he gets his own bitch. They were just stock cliche and kind of uncomfortable. I would have also developed Cassandra a bit more, since it's definitely the best episode of the series. Cruddy TV could have been dropped completely, since the only good stuff is the stuff about Lister's appeal, and that could have been attached to any episode. And it could have preferably been a Kat or Kachansky-centric episode, since Crichton has had several episodes dedicated to him in previous series, and Kat's never had an episode before, same with Kachansky, and Crichton had 2 episodes in Series 7, whereas the Kat's only episode ever and in Series 7 was cut. Plus, Pete definitely didn't have to be a 2-parter. Captain's Office would have stood on its own, seeing as how there was a setup, conflict, and ending that would have worked even without the dinosaur. And the finale. I think the chameleonic microbe could have worked, but combining it with their escape and the Baxter's Hooch stuff, it comes off as bloated, and without that dragging it down, it could have been a great episode. Like, is there a duplicate of Crichton in the Mirror Universe? Since everyone's double, aside from his, is addressed. Plus, I'd have kept the original ending, because that scene with Rimmer going back and forth, trying to memorize cesium, francolithic, mixyalbidium, rixie-dixie-doxy-dexy-droxide, is hilarious. Along with the full speed ahead, Mr. Crichton, I see no ships line. I mean, really, what the series needed was better episodes with more focused plots, and not a combination of a bunch of disjointed ideas. The series had good ideas, but the bad episodes heavily outweigh them, and if Back in the Red and Pete had been cut down only 1 episode each, the series might have had time to get more concise and focused episodes, and so maybe the BBC wouldn't have put the show on the back burner, and we wouldn't have had to wait an entire decade for more Red Dwarf. And that was Red Dwarf Series VIII, which was better than Series 7, but pales in comparison to the stellar episodes that we had gotten from previous series. Maybe it's the switch from model shots to CG, or the fact that the series didn't have enough episodes to find its footing with the new expanded cast, but whatever you might think the reasons were, the series had potential that was squandered due to having a 3-parter and a 2-parter in a series that only has 8 episodes. Though I suppose it's not all bad, since without Series 8 we might not have gotten the return to form that was Series 10, and a hopefully smegging brilliant Series 11. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of how to fix it, you can hit that subscribe button, and if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. I've got to go reread the Red Dwarf novels. See you next time, Smegheads.